Hello, welcome to Codex, a podcast digging into the lore that we love. My name is Logan.
And I'm Phil.
Today we're going to start a little differently. We are going to hijack the opening from one of my favorite podcasts, which is Knowledge Fight. What they do at the beginning of their show is each host gives a bright spot from their past week. So just something that made your day or your week a little bit better. Mine is going to be getting tickets to go see Knowledge Fight live again.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I have not been keeping up with the show, and I listened to an episode at random, and it happened to be the one that came out the day before tickets went on sale, and I managed to scoop some up. So.
Nice. Oh, perfect. Yeah. That's awesome. I feel like whenever the idea of like a shining positive light comes up, I always feel like a failed dad if I choose not something that my kid did. But I'm going to take the failed dad route and say that my like positive, like good thing that really has been on my mind a lot lately is last Sunday I went to a 10:30 a.m. showing of Dune Part 2. And it was fantastic, and I loved everything about it.
That 10:30 Dune sounds like an 8 a.m. Calc 3.
Oh, it was so good. It was usually just like the way that my schedule works out. I've ended up going like the last couple times I've seen a movie have been like the first person in the theater show. And it has always been so nice to go in there. And I mean, even I think it was opening weekend for Dune last weekend, and there was probably 15 people in that theater. It was so nice.
That's amazing.
Go in there, get
having the empty theater.
Yes. Yeah. And it was a good movie. It was good. Dune was I took a class at URock, and it was like opening sci-fi. It was like basically all the like sci-fi hits, and it was run by Duckwitz, and I didn't read most of the books in that class, and I like went back to read them after the fact, and Dune was one of those, and it just like I loved it the first time I read it, and then it was a pandemic read for me. Like I read the first 3 Dune books, and then part 1 came out, and it was like the first movie that we saw in our new house, which was cool. We like did the stream it while it was out in theaters thing. So just like going to see Dune 2 was just like, it was a good like close to that. It was good times. Highly recommend going to see it.
What like an interesting snapshot that will be forever. Just like every time you watch Dune, you're just like, oh yeah, that's right. I've lived in a submarine for a year.
I was thinking about that a lot when I wrote a review for it up on the site, and the first thing I think the opening paragraph was it was like something about in the pandemic somewhere between everyone getting into sourdough and watching Tiger King was when I read Dune, and just like the idea that sourdough, Tiger King, and Dune will always just be this thing that is mid 2020 is such a weird notion. Weird flashbulb memories for things.
That sentence shouldn't be relatable, but it is immediately to a lot of people.
Yeah. That's crazy stuff.
Anyway, I don't know what we're talking about today.
Oh, I'm so excited. I've been like trying to keep this one under wraps for a little while, and we're doing it a little bit later than I had planned on doing it. But
is it in our episode idea list already?
I don't think it was.
Oh man, so I can't even like guess reliably.
Yeah. Right. So I will give you 2 clues, or 1 clue mostly that will work.
Oh boy.
It is a game, and it came up recently because a lot of people were they were kind of comparing the new Suicide Squad live service game to this game.
Man, I am so wildly out of the loop that that is almost meaningless to me.
It is. Suicide Squad is like was already going to be a bad time in previews live service game that came out, and it is now a month after it came out, and no one is talking about it anymore.
What is
Does that
it?
sound familiar?
Is it an FPS?
It's a third-person shooter live service, like looter shooter thing.
Okay. Rage. Are we talking about Rage?
Oh, close. It is a one name. What we are talking about today is an online role-playing game made by Bioware, the creators of Mass Effect and Dragon Age. It came out in February of 2019, and by November of 2019, it was already for sale for $5, and it was like all future development of the game was canceled in 2021 after they had already talked about basically rebuilding the entire thing. It is a live service game.
Ooh.
It has an Iron Man-like flight system.
Oh, okay.
Have I got you yet?
Yeah.
Today we are talking about the Anthem of Creation.
We are. I won money from Anthem. I won a lunch bet that Anthem was going to be a tragic dumpster fire.
Well,
that's all I know about it. I know it was bad, and I was right, and I got free Culvers out of it.
Yes.
So
okay,
I am excited for this.
Okay, awesome. So I am not here to evangelize that Anthem is a good game. I actually re-downloaded it about a month and a half ago now and played through the first couple missions and like re-went through my save. And I'm still disappointed that it didn't work out because it truly is fun to fly around in that game. Like they 100% nailed the 90% of the time you're flying around like Iron Man and then hovering and doing electricity stuff. But the part where it kind of fell apart was just, it was not a game that was very well conceived at the beginning, and then they followed through on a vision. It was kind of a thing that changed forever and ever. Which actually isn't that dissimilar to what Anthem, like the world of Anthem actually is. So the thing that I wanted to talk about is the titular Anthem, and like what it means, like what that is. But kind of, we have to do a bit of a greatest hits of Bioware storytelling first to get there.
Perfect.
So stop me if you've heard of things like, precursor races or, magic from the past or, things that have been tainted by an otherworldly force. Your Mass Effect and Dragon Age greatest hits.
Your Mad Lib version of like the last 12 years of AAA game development.
Yes. Yeah. So the whole like beginning of Anthem is that it takes place on a planet called Coda. I feel like we need to have a drinking game with this based on every time there's a music term.
Music, yeah.
'Cause it's going to come up.
Okay.
So it takes place on this planet called Coda. There are humans there. They are not synonymous to Earth humans. They are just humans that exist here. There's no, like, it's a futuristic, but also kind of Middle Ages kind of thing. But it's like a whole new creation myth. And like basically the creation myth, as far as the humans are concerned, is that there were these beings a long time ago called Shapers, capital S. They intended to create the entire world, brackets, whatever that means, in 9 days. But for some reason, they left after 3. And then the Shapers simply disappeared, and they left all of their instruments of creation in the world. That would be number 3 for you.
Mm-hmm.
So they basically just like left. And the big mystery one of the big mysteries of the game that, unfortunately, because it was canceled, never got to be followed through on is, who are the Shapers? What do they do? Why are their things still here? What caused them to leave? All of that stuff.
Sometimes the Shapers got to go get a pack of smokes. And maybe they don't come back from that.
So the Shapers, they're, like a background influence. The big thing in the game is that you fly around and then you find the shaper instruments that are going haywire, and then you fix them, and then you stop the Anthem of Creation for overwhelming everything. But so Anthem instruments. The planet is called Coda. So is the Anthem of Creation like truly actually music? And my answer to you is yes, kinda. So there's, and we'll get a little bit deeper into some of this, but there are people in the world, humans, who are called ciphers, and they can hear the anthem, and it kind of acts like a siren song. So once they hear it, they forever want to hear it again, and then ultimately it drives them mad. Like once they get close enough or hear too much of it, they kind of go crazy. So it is music. It is also a nebulous force that's so much more.
This feels like it should be like a fantasy game, and this is their magic system that they're building on, not their, like, I don't know, Avatar ripoff.
Yeah, but so that's the cool thing, is that it's both. So you like go to there's, I guess there's like two kind of big divides here. It's magical technology. So the ciphers who hear the anthem sometimes, they have to be in these things called amplifiers, which are technology that are created by scientists called arcanists who studied the shaper relics. So there are all of these like old instruments laying around that they go and they're like city-sized instruments. So they like go and study them, and then they reverse engineer technology out of it. And that's how the ciphers are able to hear it. But everyone is also still in the most, like, you look at the people and you look at the Fort Tarsus is like the place that you walk around, and it is fantasy. Like, it's a Game of Thrones kind of fantasy style thing. It doesn't look like Dragon Age, but it is very much fantasy. But also there are these giant mechanical suits of armor that have like actuators, and they're big pieces of machines, but they run on echoes of the anthem. So they're like powered by magic, but they are machines. And it's kind of interesting how they mesh the two of them, because it is Avatar, but not in the kind of boots on the ground kind of way that Avatar is. It is very much its own thing.
It definitely, I kind of like call to memory some of the trailers, and maybe like Gersman or someone playing it. And it definitely like visually invoked Avatar for me when I saw it.
Yeah. Like, yeah. It's like super vertical and like really jungle.
Yes.
Yeah. And like very untamed jungle.
Rain. Yeah.
Like
geometry and
you cooled the
waterfalls to cool off your
cooled
suit.
The jets.
Maybe?
Yeah. Okay. That's how you got more boost powers, that you flew through the waterfalls.
Do you think they had did they have this property cooking and then they picked it and made this game? Or did someone make like a cool tech demo for flying around and they're like, man, we should do something with this tech demo and turn this into a game? Like, which?
So the flying was late.
Okay.
Because Anthem was kind of like a dead on arrival failed thing, there's been a lot of like post hoc reporting about it. And there's actually a pretty good Kotaku piece about just like the absolute disaster development that was this game. And it was like the flying seems like it was incorporated very, very late into the process. And like
weird.
Some of the weird things that were incorporated is the game was called Beyond for almost all of the time, and most of the devs found out that the name was changed to Anthem the same time that it was revealed to people at an E3 showcase. So it just like so much weird. It's remember, this is coming out. This is coming out after Inquisition had a truly awful development process, but it's before Andromeda came out, or it was being developed as Andromeda was being developed as well. And that was turning into a bit of a disaster as well. So it's just like EA management of Bioware just like really, really messed it up. And it was bad time for everything. It was not great. But yeah, the flying was added later, which is such an absurd notion that this third person robot shooter that is the image, right? Like the image is you're flying around in waterfalls. And that was so late.
I'm just like thinking of any other ground-based game that I've ever played, and I feel like suddenly adding flight towards the end would like radically change a bunch of development decisions that have already been made. Like, flight is a cheat code in a lot of things for a reason.
Yeah. And like, especially some of the suits, you can like literally fly up and then you just hover and then you just shoot dudes with your hover. Like it's infinite hover shooting lightning bolts at people. It's a crazy balance thing that like, also remember it's a live game. So you go out with your 3 other buddies and you're all able to do that. It's a very,
this would have been like in the wake of Destiny making that model semi-functional, right? Okay.
Yeah. It was 2019, so that was probably before Apex, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh no, I think it released the same week as Apex.
Oh, yeah. How long was this thing in development?
Released the week before Apex Legends. Just absolutely ate its lunch. I think it was in development. So it was like announced in 2014, I think.
Oh, so probably north of 5 years for sure then. So probably like 6, maybe more.
Oh, it started in 2012.
So pushing 7. Granted, like maybe they were dormant for a chunk of that. Who knows? But
yeah.
Long enough that you think you wouldn't be making like core design philosophy changes
late in the game. Yeah.
Multiple years into a thing that has a release date.
Yeah. But I think that's kind of so in some of the pieces, there is this mention of like the Bioware magic that they do all of this work and then it all somehow magically comes together at the end, which is kind of what happened with Dragon Age. And if you kind of, I guess like more for the purview of the show, but if you remove the gameplay aspects and like the marketing of it and everything, there is the Bioware like world building magic. Like, you know, the reason the show is called Codex is because of the Mass Effect Codex. Like it is like this omnibus of all of this great writing that just exists in the game, but is never really touched upon. And there is some of that here. There's some of the world building and like the magic that they put into these spaces that feels different than, you know, the Mass Effect and the like Dragon Age stuff that they've done in the past.
Yeah.
Which is, you know, I guess like more the focus of what we're talking about here. But yeah, like the development is a bummer. And I guess like we can kind of get into that. Like, so to talk about the anthem, like the actual anthem, we do have to spend some time talking about the shapers. And then we have to kind of talk about how they use the anthem. Yeah, so the Shaper relics, there's these like massive pieces of technology, and like they're so big, some of them, that human settlements were built inside of them. So like a bunch of the different cities are just like based there. And then they like slowly built the settlements out and like built them around them, which has some like real big problems because
some downstream effects.
Yes.
Building your town inside a hollowed out nuclear reactor.
Yeah. And that's kind of what happens. So the Shaper relics or instruments, like they're derelict machines and they are degrading machines, but they are still volatile.
Those are my favorite kind of machines, to be fair. Include all 3 of those tags.
Yes. So they're basically like giant engines that are still filled with, you know, probably 6+ days of fuel to create the world. that were just abandoned and left to grow moss on. And every once in a while, something gets a little hinky and they turn back on in bad ways. So they're like relics that are machines that are meant to create the world around you. And that's everything from, realities, which is a weird thing we'll get into maybe later, but they make the plants and the animals and things like that. Like they're giant machines that are 3D printing life in some way. But the thing that happens in the game, now that you're several thousand years away from when that started, is that these machines go a little awry. And sometimes they will, a little critter walks underneath it, and then they get turned into a big scary critter that can breathe fire, because they walk into this shaper energy that is being off-put. Or in like actual bad instances, the like pieces of the anthem that is contained within the machines it gets out, becomes more volatile, and then it creates these things called cataclysms that just like absolutely explodes and is like your nuclear bomb effect. You like start the game going through one of them, and it turns out it used to be an old settlement that was just absolutely leveled when one of these devices just went off in the bad kind of way.
Is that like a frequent sort of things? What kind of disaster scale like timeline are we working on here? Is this a thing where one of these is popping off every third weekend, or like hundreds of years in between events?
Probably closer to the every third weekend, but not the like
nice,
not the like cataclysmic one. So there's like I guess like a gradient of how those go off. So like when the devices start, they start going slightly bad. They put off some bad energy, and that like has some byproducts that are good. Like it creates stuff in the game that's like referred to as like ember and crystals, I think, which are some of your live service crafting materials,
your currencies.
It's your mode of light.
Okay.
So it generates that stuff, which is then used by people in the world to like make devices or things like that. So there's like the positive aspects of it, that if you get there fast enough and you kind of fix the machine, put it back in balance, you get a nice reward of some crystallized plants, but you don't have, a bomb going off. But as that kind of escalates, the machine gets more and more out of whack, and, more controls are removed as it like vibrates itself apart. And then it starts like spewing out some of that Anthem energy. That's when the really bad cataclysm, like level a city.
That's when the vibes get bad.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's when it levels the city. And then you have like the group of people that you play as. They're called freelancers, which is a whole other thing.
Yeah.
It's actually a really good name. It just is really tainted with real world aspects, which is a real bummer. Because you fly javelins. I assume
it's also like another musical reference. Like, do all the music references feel okay in game, or does it come off as kind of like hokey and cheesy?
I think it feels okay. Because some of them, like Shaper Instruments and like Anthem, the world being called Coda is like, I feel like that's poetic in less of a like cheesy kind of way of like, oh yes, I don't know music theory well enough to know exactly what a coda is, but I do know that is a thing that you go back to every once in a while or something.
Yeah.
So like that makes sense. The Anthem of Creation is like, I don't know. I think it's kind of fun to think of a creative force as music. Like that's kind of a cool thing. And then like, for the most part, I think those are like the major ones. There's a couple of other funny ones that I can think of, but those are the big ones that come up.
Okay. So it's not like a constant stream.
No. And there's like plenty of other like good fantasy stuff. Like the spy agency is called Corvus, which is just that's just good stuff right there. Good.
Yep. Yeah. that's also chorus, and you're just changing the U to a V kind of.
Yeah.
So like.
So yeah, there's not like a ton of like bad music stuff in there, but it's fun. I guess like echoes. That's the other thing. So when the cataclysm happens, like the bad stuff, you have to like this is the gameplay way of doing this is that you have to fly your javelin around and you have to collect these floating orbs of light and then put them back in the machine. Which is your classic Destiny, get the orb and dunk it thing.
Yeah.
And those are called
Does it have
echoes.
a dope animation?
No, I think they just trail behind you.
That's
I
That
think you can have like
I
4.
feel like the football-esque animations in Destiny are what like sell that activity for me.
Yeah.
Like seeing your little spindly hunter like tuck that thing underneath his
and
elbow and charge forward. Yeah, it's just there's something slightly joyous about that.
Yeah.
And it's kind of absurdity.
So you kind of float near the thing and put the anthems of the echo back in there. And then it, puts it back together and then it calms the machine, and that's nice. Even the like big cataclysmic ones when like things get really wild. And it's also like thinking of the scale of like, sometimes it makes some weird rocks to just bombs out a city. It also does that with things that it alters. So at the beginning, like the slightly out of whack ones will make, the bear-sized creatures that shoot electricity or fun stuff like that. And then as the things get worse and worse, you have these giant titans that are, 7-story tall buildings that just walk around and smash things.
Yes. All right.
Yeah, which is what ends up leveling the cities. Like bad stuff like that makes terrible storms, all of that. And I don't know how explicit it is in the game about this, like specifically when it is happening, but in some of the Codex entries, it definitely makes it seem like what is happening is not it is generating new things, but it is tapping into alternate realities, and it is bringing in alternate versions of that thing, like imbuing it with like
doing a Stargate.
Yeah, doing a swapsies.
Yeah.
So yeah, and maybe like the best way.
Does anything ever disappear?
Ooh. Yes,
if it's
actually.
grabbing things from somewhere else, do things disappear
Yes.
from? Okay.
So there's cataclysms, which are the outward manifestation of all of this bad stuff happening. And then there's things called conjunctions, which is where instead of spitting stuff out, it sucks stuff in. And this like gets to some of the like future mystery stuff of like, oh, where did the Shapers go? What happened to them? Also, where does this stuff go? Like when stuff gets sucked into the Shaper instruments and is like powered by the Anthem, like it's not clear where that stuff goes. It's never answered. It just like disappears and it is gone. Yeah, it just like poof. So yeah, it sucks and it blows.
Your classic Mega Maid.
Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of like the Shaper relics and the Shaper energy. Let's take a quick break, and then I will come back and I will answer the question: what exactly is the Anthem? And we're back. The Anthem of Creation. So what exactly is the Anthem? It's poorly defined, but it's the raw power of creation, whatever that means to you.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's no way. There's no way they're going to dip their toe in the well of deciding all things at once.
No. So there's like some stuff about what the Anthem is, but it's like explained. It's a definition by example more than anything else.
Okay.
So the relics I was talking about earlier, there's like those things run on Shaper energy, capital E. And that's powerful stuff that can dumbly alter things. So if something like walks into the beam or like within the orb of stuff gets changed within this thing, they're called chimeras, and they're basically just here's a cool scorpion thing that only knows destruction. So it's like really dumb. Like it like twists animals, or
like Rita Repulsa. We're just making Power Rangers villains.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it just like alters things and typically makes them very angry at you for game reasons. That's also
Plot,
the power.
TM.
Yeah. That's also the power that ends up turning stuff into embers or crystals. So that's Shaper energy. That's specifically when the Shaper machine itself is going awry and bad things are happening. The Anthem energy, also capital E, is the even more powerful, potent stuff. That's like literally the power of creation. So that instead of like animal walks into, area of effect and just gets angry at you and like can breathe fire, now it is like, now we're talking about those like giant titans that are elemental and they are sentient. So there's in the game there's these things called wyverns, which are what you would expect a wyvern to be. It's just a flying dragon that shoots fire. Those didn't exist though. Like those are outputs from a cataclysm where the Anthem energy was particularly bad. And now the world is just populated with them because they are sentient beings that can, reproduce. They like hunt. They are like creatures. It just so happens that they can breathe fire now.
How are there still like people? I feel like, I don't know, if in like the middle of May there were just dragons, I would be clocking out by like July. Like how long has society continued under these circumstances?
So not very long.
Okay.
It's in I think the year that the game takes place is 468.
Okay.
Which is it's year 468 of the humans being out from underneath the humans were also like a slave race underneath another like race. They're literally called the Urgoth.
All right.
And 468
keeps
years
getting
ago,
better for people, man.
Yep. 468 years ago, they somehow invented the javelins. The Legion of Dawn was formed. They fought back the Urgoths. We won our independence, and then we created giant walled cities all around this particular continent. And then shit's been going bad ever since.
I mean, to be fair, it doesn't sound like it was great to start with. So
nope.
This is at worst lateral movement.
Yes. Yeah, but there's like a king, there's a spy agency, that there's a whole thing. There's like several walled cities. One of them was
Palace intrigue.
Yes. Yeah. Palace intrigue. Again, like none of that stuff is really in the game. They're all nice breadcrumbs for live service stuff to happen later that just never really happened.
That's a shame.
Yeah. So I mentioned earlier cataclysms. So a cataclysm is like Shaper energy going a little wild, creates chimeras, and then when they can't maintain the anthem, like when everything gets so out of whack, it like really bad things happen. And that's where kind of the reality altering stuff comes in. But it's also a cataclysm is also how ciphers were created. So the group of people who can hear the anthem is actually just a byproduct of one of the relics going haywire, and then all of a sudden, someone could hear the anthem, and that really didn't work out well for that first person, and it continues to not work out for ciphers as it goes on. But that they heard the call of the anthem, and in the game, the cipher is the person who stays back at base, and they talk to the javelin pilot as they're off gallivanting. So they sit in their giant amplifier and they can like see the radar and all of that stuff.
Gotcha. So like Psyker 40K cross Ender's game.
Yeah. Your handler back at base. And the anthem kind of runs the cipher taps into the anthem in order to communicate with you in some ways, I think. But the person flying the javelin also, like, the machine is powered by Anthem or is like connected to it in some way, which means that except for the main antagonist of the game, a Cypher could never fly a javelin because their mind would just be completely turned to mush because of all of the inputs.
Interesting. Is it clear where the suits come from? Like, it seems like a bit of a technological leap.
Yeah. So they were invented. They were invented by the human arcanists who were studying the different relics and the instruments and stuff.
Like, are the instruments related to these suit functions in it? Like, can you look at those instruments and be like, oh, I see why they picked Iron Man's suit when they learned how magic worked? Or is it just because, like, Iron Man suits are cool?
It's mostly because Iron Man suits are cool.
Okay, that's totally fine.
It's also kind of like a reflection on, like, how terrible of a planet this is. So, like, you stay in your walled cities or in your camps, but for the most part, humans are not outside of the city unless they are in the suits, because it's just
the walls with them.
Yeah, because it's just like such a caustic, terrible place.
Okay.
And that's kind of like manifested in the whole idea of the Shapers only spending 3 days building the world. There's like storms that are just like raging across the world that are just like catastrophic stuff.
Gotcha.
Like earthquakes, like all of that stuff. Like the world is very much still in a, like, it is lush and it is gorgeous.
Primordial soup.
Yes, but it is still very primordial. And there's even one of the only live events they were able to do was it's called Echoes of Reality. Oh, that's the other thing. Big cataclysms get good names. So the first one, and like the main one throughout the main campaign of the game, is called the Heart of Rage.
Perfect.
Which is just such a good name.
That sounds like a Magic the Gathering artifact that like gets banned because it's too good.
Oh, you know what? I feel like if you were to look at screenshots of Anthem, it is equal parts the like Zendikar floating pyramids, like really messed up looking world, with a little bit of Mirrodin. Like it's a little artifacty. It's
Scars
a little
of Zendikar.
Yes. Yeah. That's I feel like that's a perfect encapsulation of the crazy stuff going on in this. A very different way to go, but related.
Sure.
There's you play as a freelancer who flies a javelin. The freelancers were a part of the Legion of Dawn. The Legion of Dawn was like 3 different groups. There was the freelancers, the paladins, and then the other one, and I can't remember what they're called. The paladins turned into the Dominion, which is the main antagonist of the game. And those are like from the roots of the rebellion 500 years ago. Those 3 different groups split apart, went their own ways, and then started turning into these other groups. But there's also weird insectoid creatures that came from somewhere. And they're called the Scars. And they're like literally insectoid things that throughout the different text, in the different Codex entries, they're not from this planet. So like talking about like, you know, when those machines go bad and they have a conjunction and they suck things up and shoot them. The Scars are an alien race that showed up on this planet and are able to use Shaper technology to, like, they use them as teleporters, basically. It's like really super volatile. Don't do it as humans, but for some reason these creatures can. And it kind of like hints at, you know, is there something else going on here? Like, is there another planet, or other group of people? And then that also connects up with the thing I actually just remembered I was talking about, the Echoes of Reality. So there's a lot of like mind bending stuff going on in here where, because it's such a primordial world that like is shifting and is changing, and these huge forces, like the Anthem of Creation is like making things. Its entire purpose is to create. It is to like generate, and because of that, it's also to destroy. And when you interact with raw, like echoes of the anthem, really weird stuff happens. So like within this live event, like one of the main antagonists like really just kicks off a cataclysm themselves and stabs an echo of the anthem, and then they are sucked into the anthem, and it like breaks reality into multiple different echoes of like these specific places that you go have now been turned into a different version of it. So the anthem has control over not just, you know, the flora and fauna of this place, or the shape of it, or how it is generated. It's like literally the form of reality, you know, time. And you like step that out further. Like, is the anthem responsible for physics, and how does that work?
Yeah. And I guess that's like, it seems like they should have that answer if they can make the suits. That's what comes to mind. I wonder like what allows you to harness some of that without, I suppose that's, I guess not, there's plenty of things we don't have answers to, and we can still blow up half the planet. So
yeah. So yeah, that's like the anthem. It is like truly just a weird nebulous, like even the Codex entry it looks like a black hole, or I guess a white hole, and it is just like an orb of energy. But somehow, you know, this precursor race is able to attempt to turn it into something, and just like generates this whole thing of like, okay, well, if there is a group of people called the Shapers, and they create things that can harness the anthem, like it becomes your classic God narrative of like, okay, well, wait a minute, these are the people who created the world we live on, so they are our gods, right? But then there's also the anthem, so who created that, and how did that happen?
Turtles all the way down.
Yeah.
What is your, like, as this story is going, what are you doing? What is your goal here? Are you just trying to survive, or is society attempting to like advance and beat back some of these forces? Like, what's the goal?
The primary goal of the game is to silence the Heart of Rage, that cataclysm. It's like the one that you start out, your classic, you're there to shut it down after this bad thing happens, and then you fail, and then the whole rest of the game is working up to being able to do that. But the reason that was spawned, like the reason the Heart of Rage even happened, is because one of the main people from the Dominion, another human group of people, they activated it on purpose. So they started a cataclysm inside this highly populated bastion of humanity, because they thought they could, like you do, because they thought they could control it. And it was because remember how I said earlier that the way that ciphers work is that they don't, like, because they are so open to the anthem, they cannot power a javelin. Yeah. So the first one who can is the guy who sets it all off. And his whole idea is that he's going to like use the anthem to make sure the anthem can't hurt us anymore. You classic bad guy narrative.
Seal the breach, kind of.
Yeah. And they're also, so the Dominion is also this like highly technological, much more than typical humans. Also very much a fascist group as you be. But they're the ones, the main suits that you can have. There's what is it? It's Ranger, which is just, here's your third person shooty guy. There's Infiltrator, who is the sneaky stabby. There's Colossus, which is, as it sounds, the big one with the big guns. And then there's Storm, I think is what it's called. And that's a Dominion invented suit, which is that's the wizard. That's the one that shoots lightning bolts and
support.
Yeah. And that's one that is actually using the only time that one of the suits have been able to actually harness the power of the anthem to create storms and things. So that's Dominion tech. So they're already on their way to being able to use it in some capacity. So yeah, that's how the whole thing kicks off. Is that
so
humans
like
are
at like industrial revolution point, kind of.
Yeah, except you can fly in the air and shoot lightning bolts.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if Cole like had the energy density of Anthem, then
that's true.
We would have had Iron Man suits by now.
Ugh, one can dream.
I feel like if Cole, like if we just track the timeline from when we started like really utilizing coal at an industrial scale, if it was that good, someone would have got around to just making a mech suit for the fun of it by now. And we don't have dragons to fight currently. So
that's true. Yeah, if you had dragons in a world that constantly wanted to kill you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I think that bumps Iron Man's suit up the priority list pretty quickly.
Yeah, exosuit much more important if you are on a world that needs an exoskeleton a bit more.
Yeah. Yeah, when you're not at the top of the food chain.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's the Anthem. I just wanted to leave with like the last kind of like the potential, the what Anthem could have been. That is the thing that is the reason I wanted to do this episode, and also like kind of bums me out. But it also, I think I mentioned this probably a couple of weeks ago now, that I've like stumbled across the thing that if we were to ever do like a tabletop game, I would want to do it in this world because of all of these fun things and like how cool it would be to fly around in mech suits. And it's like the main ones are where/what are the Shapers and what happened to them. Like I feel like there's a really cool mystery there somewhere. It's like, what happened to this race? Where are they? Where have they gone? And like there are people who say that they actually interacted with them. So the myth of if they are real or not is still there. The scars, like where are they from? How do they use Shaper technology in ways that humans can't yet? And those are like the big ones. And then there's also like Corvus and the rest of the world of Coda. Like there's a royal family, there's tension between nations, like there's plenty of room for human drama, which is some like you do a couple of spy missions for Corvus, but it doesn't really ever go anywhere. Like it was building to something. It was a real like meet Lord Shaxx, and then he'll tell you about his thing over the course of the next 6 expansions, and it just that never happened. And
boy,
then,
this sounds like Mass Effect, man. Like
it does.
Tiers of focus map pretty.
Yeah,
they did a Bioware.
Yeah, and then they did like an extra Bioware because there's actually 2 other precursor races that aren't the founders of the world.
Or are they?
Or are they? So there's like the Urgoth, right? Like the old humanity's original oppressors. They might be back. They might not be exterminated. They might be coming to do an attack somewhere. And then there's also this group of people that are mentioned in like 2 entries, and they're called the Anzu, and they are a group of different peoples, just like a collective noun for a bunch of different peoples that potentially interacted with the Shapers, and they are still around, and they run the Dominion. So, like, what does that mean? They're called witches. What does that mean? What are their plans? We'll never know.
We'll never know.
We'll never know. It was the closest I've ever got to just looking up some of the random writers and sending them a tweet and just being like, "Can you please, God, tell me?
Give me some bullet points here, just an outline."
Yeah.
Do you think they knew yet?
Oh, I don't know.
Did those questions have answers when Anthem came out? I wonder.
I bet they were, let's plant some seeds and we'll build it as we go.
Yeah.
Because I mean, even looking at Destiny, like I feel like that's how that works too.
Oh, for sure.
Like, oh, let's kill Cade. Okay. That works for this expansion, and then what? Well, somehow he comes back 3 expansions later, like, where's Osiris? Ugh, Osiris would be a good episode.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of those things, now that like games specifically are in development for so much longer relative to when we were first playing them. So much changes between the times you would have to like solidify those storylines and when that product hits a shelf that I feel like they just have to leave things loose in case, like, here's a quick for instance. When I worked at Best Buy, AT&T was pushing their mobile wallet application. They spent a lot of money making sure we all knew about their mobile wallet application. Do you know the name of AT&T's proprietary mobile wallet application?
Of course not.
It is ISIS.
No.
Yeah. So
Oops.
they had that, and then like within a very short period of time, suddenly AT&T didn't want to talk about ISIS anymore because that name became not super great for AT&T to have spent a lot of money trying to create brand recognition for.
Oh my God.
So I feel like some things you're just like, man, I don't know what's going to happen in 6 years, so let's just leave all the nouns a little vague.
Yeah.
Because who knows?
Ugh. Yeah, and I mean, maybe that's like kind of the nice part of the music theme is that you just have like, you have stuff to go through. You can just go down a list of musical terms, and you know, this is these are the clefs, you know.
Yeah, it does provide like, I guess, some backstopper framework.
Yeah,
for them to tap into.
Yeah.
Maybe is it worth playing Anthem?
Hell yeah. Here's the thing.
Okay.
I think for the low price of what I can only imagine is $2, or it's an EA game, so it's on Game Pass. So just download Anthem, play Anthem for like an hour, like get through the first mission, maybe like chat at the home base for the first time. That'll give you your fill of this is how the spacesuits fly, and isn't that neato that you can fly through waterfalls and cool your jets down. And then that will be enough, and then you can just wipe your hands of it and be done with it, or just continue playing through it. Because actually, it is interesting, and it is like it's a cool world to fly around in, and the shooting's not bad. The fun of like, still, it is 2024, and I don't think there are any games where you can just fly around in the air and just hover there and unload on some bugs. You know, like for some reason, just like the Nemesis system, this is one of those weird things that was so cool and was so fun, and no one has taken it.
Just been rotting in a closet since.
Yeah. So like, if for nothing else, like Anthem, I honestly think that like Anthem is everywhere for $5, if not less. Like it still functions. Like you can still play it. And when I loaded into it the other day, there were still people playing. Like I loaded into a full server of people, which is, 4 people.
I hope they're having a good time.
Not that great, but
yeah. I hope that's a human who is just weighing on Anthem and is stoked to be playing it, and not like some poor kid somewhere who only has Anthem. They're like, wow.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know.
I guess I'll just keep playing Duck Hunt because that's all I have.
Oh, you might have to. Let's click this link. It is part of Game Pass. Oh, $20. Don't pay $20 for Anthem.
Okay. Yeah.
That's absurd. Don't do that.
I feel like we need a tier. I don't know how to label this, of like the Game Pass sort of like play the demo sort of thing.
Yeah.
Like play the demo of Anthem. Like don't give them a lot of money. See if dip your toe in the water.
This is like one of those games that is forever on sale though. Like this goes on sale more than an Ubisoft game does. Like you should pick up Anthem for $2 to $5 for an afternoon of flying around and doing the looter shooting and doing all of that. It is not $20. Unless you got some friends.
$20.
Yeah. If you got some friends that you can rope into it, then, go for it. But I was very surprised that 5 years after it came out, it still felt as good as I as I remembered it being.
Well, at least there is some positive takeaway from the dumpster fire that has been Anthem the game.
Ugh, poor Anthem. Poor the people who worked on Anthem.
The HP touchpad of video games.
Yeah, rip.
For $5, it's pretty good. This is a totally serviceable $5 game that they spent $40 million to make.
Just something. Millions and millions on.
Yeah.
Poor
just
them.
Like the touchpad. Yeah, it's not a bad tablet for like $50.
If you can get this on sale, it's probably okay. Ugh. All right. Well, I think that's an episode on the Anthem of Creation. Thank you so much for listening to this weird meander through one of the worst reviewed Bioware games of all time. If you like the show, tell a friend, rate a review on your podcast player of choice. GordonHamburger.com is now live and where you can go to read reviews or find links and all that stuff. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next time when we discuss hopefully something to greater acclaim. I guess we'll see.
Who knows?
Bye.